Hello and welcome to another Elite Audio video, and this week we will be discussing the merits of the Luxman L-507z integrated amplifier that I have been living with for the last 6 months, listening to on a daily basis, using it for all types of listening from serious to casual. And the burning question absolutely is this amplifier heaven or is it hell? Stay tuned, all is about to be revealed. So welcome to this week's video, and as I alluded to in the introduction, this week it's all about the Luxman L-507z. Many of you, I am sure, are very familiar with the Luxman brand, and in fact Luxman had a very unique privilege of celebrating 100 years in business, which I think they are the world's oldest and longest electronics manufacturer. I don't think anything else comes close to that, but please, if I am wrong, let me know in the comments below. So I first took this amplifier into my system about 6 months ago, and I have to say I've been a long-time Luxman fan. I love the build quality. I like the very retro aesthetic of the amplifier. And it's just one of those amplifiers, it's exceptionally unique in terms of it's easy for me to say, it's exceptionally unique in terms of its aesthetic. And straight away when you see a Luxman amplifier, perhaps with one exclusion, in the integrated range when they brought out the L595 special edition, which was really, I would say, a tribute to the 80s version of that amplifier. But anyway, all Luxman amplifiers on the integrated side, apart from that special edition, have this very unique and immediately recognisable aesthetic. So I must admit I was quite excited about the prospect of using this amplifier. So let me just start initially with the sort of what it is. When you get a Luxman, even the unboxing experience is quite interesting because these are triple box from the factory. The care and attention that goes into the packing is, I would say, unrivaled anywhere else in the hi-fi industry. The amplifier itself is wrapped in protective, what's the word? It's like a very thin sort of foam type material, but very robust. And then on top of that, it's put inside a cloth bag that is elasticated on the underside. So in transit, it's not going to sustain any damage. It's beautifully well packaged. And again, it shows that this Japanese company really cares about even the unboxing experience of this amplifier. It's already won a huge number of awards. It replaced the L507UX2, which was a great amplifier, and I listened to that on many occasions. But the 507Z is quite a step up for Luxman, and when I get into the technical specifications of this amplifier, all will become clear. But let's just say that the aesthetic departure from old to new, the new amplifier has got these almost white dials compared to the older blue dials on the UX2, and also it now incorporates an LED display, which is a brilliant inclusion because it removes the guesswork as to what volume setting your amplifier is actually on. And that used to drive me nuts about the old amplifier, is that you would have no idea what the volume setting was. If it's far away from the listening position, my eyesight isn't good enough to determine where the little black notch is on the rotary dial. So this inclusion of the red LED, I really welcome that, and that's a massive improvement aesthetically. So when we then think about the design and build quality of this amplifier, one thing's for sure, if you've ever handled a proper Japanese made Luxman, and there are some 505s that were Chinese built and now no longer the case, all the Luxmans are built in Japan. The build quality is something to behold. It is remarkable. When the aluminium construction, the fit of the panels, the shut lines from one panel to another is exceptional. It's literally, I think many manufacturers could take a leaf out of Luxman's book in terms of perhaps the quality control, so the QC on the amplifier, so what it goes through before it even leaves the factory. Clearly, this is something that they take exceptionally seriously, and it's obvious the second you unbox this amplifier. The whole amplifier just oozes quality. So in terms of design and build quality, I could easily score this amplifier 9 out of 10, if not 10 out of 10. It genuinely warrants that kind of high score. The remote it comes with is not a plastic remote, it's a proper aluminium remote control. In fact, if you lose one of these or you have to replace it, they are not inexpensive, I can tell you. But again, it gives you that whole sense of quality from the unboxing to the first usage that you give this amplifier. Even the feel of all the controls, they have that quality, and I'd say it's a very tactile amplifier. When you change the inputs on the rotary dial, you can really feel the notching of each of the individual inputs, and again it has that quality feel as it clicks from one input to another. And again, I can say that there's many manufacturers that when you click in inputs, it's quite, I would call it brittle, but there is a smoothness and I would say almost a subtlety to the way it rotates, but it's very decisive and precise, so there is no doubts in your mind at all that you are working with a high quality component. So design and build quality, absolutely without question one of the best in the industry. So let's move on to the features and the specification of this amplifier. And again, what separates it from the old 507 to the new. Now one of these, I'm going to have to read this off my sheet because you can get tongue-tied reading these, and it's a bit like a tongue twister. If you say it fast enough, you're going to trip yourself up. So I have written this down. So Luxman have brought out their new, and they've called it Luxman Integrated Feedback Engine System. Now that replaces the old DNF system, which was the only distortion negative feedback. Now, what this means is that with many amplifiers, there is what is called negative feedback. That is part of the signal that returns back to the amplifier, and that can cause distortion, and it can definitely impact on the overall sound quality, the dynamics of your amplifier, and its ability to give you that natural organic sound. So Luxman's patented system is designed to reduce that to zero, and again it increases the level of realism and the improved dynamics, and the new system is dramatically improved over the old, and that's very obvious the first time you turn this amplifier on. In fact, without sort of jumping ahead here, we've had many previous 509X owners that have purchased a 507Z and said they prefer it to the previous 509X. Now, at the time of shooting this video, the 509Z amplifier is just being launched in the UK, and we will be featuring that in the coming weeks because we have our new demonstration unit on order from IAG, and again I am eagerly anticipating that arrival so I can sneak it off to my house and put it in my system and have a really good listen to it. Anyway, in terms of the technical specification, it's a 110 watts into 8 ohms. Now, if you've ever read any Luxman reviews where they've done the technical testing on the amplifiers, invariably these amplifiers put out more power than they have claimed. And that's very much a Japanese thing, the understated aspect of how they put things together because it then exceeds your expectations. I remember Ken Kessler writing a review on the 550 AX2, I think it was from memory, but it has a claimed 25 watts pure class A. I think he measured it as something crazy like 60 or 70 watts pure class A. Way more than Luxman even claimed. And I like that about a company. They're not trying to hoodwink or deceive. In fact, they're doing the opposite. They're actually giving you way more than they're claiming to give you. And there's been many a case, I would say, where amplifiers haven't delivered the claimed power when they're then put through the rigorous testing of some of the magazines, particularly Hi-Fi News, that are very rigorous in their technical testing. Paul Miller really takes his time and puts everything through its paces correctly so that he knows without any fear of contradiction that when he publishes something about anything he's reviewed or done the technical testing on, that it is robust and it will withstand any level of scrutiny. So Luxman are one of these companies that generally understate their outputs on their amplifiers, and I think that's quite a good thing, personally. Now, here's a very controversial aspect about Luxman amplifiers in general, and obviously this applies to the L-507z, the tone controls. Now, I know many of you who see that as some kind of sacrilege on an amplifier. What I can say from the get-go is that you can have these, so they are, what's the word, they're in a passive mode, so they put nothing into the audio circuit whatsoever, so they're effectively bypassed. However, I am a fan of tone controls, and I will explain to you why. If you've watched our videos, you will know that I generally talk a lot about the unique listening experience that we all have. We're all human beings, we're all individual, and none of our tastes in music and I would say the sound we like, which I always call season to taste, is exactly the same. The beauty of tone controls is that you can tailor to a very large degree the precise tonal response that you and you alone like. Now, if that's not your cup of tea, as I said, you can put them into the bypass mode and they have no impact on the audio circuit whatsoever. But I think when you, or even if you've got some old recordings that perhaps haven't been produced to a good standard, you can improve to a certain extent the quality of that sound from your own listening perspective by applying some EQ onto that sound for your personal taste. And I emphasize the personal part because that is what it's all about. It's personally for you. And there is also a loudness control, which for late night, low level listening is a brilliant feature. It's only operational from the remote control. You cannot access that any other way. But low level listening, you can dramatically improve the dynamics, particularly the bass response. And those of you that have done this at night, if you turn the volume right down, the dynamics tend to go. On any amplifier, the bass goes, it all sounds a bit compressed. So this kind of fills it all back out again, but at a much lower level. I wouldn't personally recommend using this at normal listening levels because it can then start to cause perhaps some bass boom or just over accentuation of certain frequencies. But generally speaking, this particular feature is designed for low level listening. You also have a speaker selector on the amplifier, so you can have speaker set A, speaker set B, or A and B both running together. So in theory, you could drive another pair of speakers in a different room from this amplifier setup. Of course, we've got the VU meters, which I touched on earlier. I love these. I just love them. You can turn the illumination off. You can also dim it down. You can have it so that you have everything lit up. So the VU meters, the LED volume indicator, and then you can turn the LED off, leaving the VU meters alone. You can dim them and then you can turn them off completely. So you can have that there's nothing on. But let's face it, if you're buying this amplifier, part of the appeal is the aesthetic of the meter. So being a fan, I generally leave it switched on. Some purists might argue that it may impact on the overall sound quality, but if I'm being honest, if there is a difference, I can't hear it. It has a huge array of inputs, including 2 XLR inputs as well, which gives you a huge amount of external devices that you can connect. This is a fully balanced amplifier, and having 2 that are selectable and all from the remote control as well is a great feature. It has a very good moving magnet, moving coil phono stage, and I would say, based on my own listening experience, it's as good as anything that I have tested up to about £600 or £700 as part of the amplifiers package. It makes it very appealing. It doesn't have a built-in DAC, it's not trying to be that, and again, I quite like that, because personally, I would rather keep the digital part completely separate. It gives me a lot more flexibility. If you're a very serious analog listener from a vinyl turntable perspective, then perhaps again you would use your own external phono stage, but it is there and it is decent, and for most people it would be more than adequate. It also has two headphone inputs, the standard full-size jack and the smaller jack. That's again different to the 507UX2, which only had one. So this additional inclusion of the additional sized headphone jack is a very nice improvement. It also has the Luxman 1088 step volume control. This is a very high quality device. It originally appeared on only the top spec Luxmans, but it's now coming into the 507, which is the first time that we've seen such a high level audiophile grade component appear on this. In fact, I'm sure this 507UX2 had that too, so if I'm wrong, I'll bring up the correction on screen, but I'm fairly sure the UX2 had that as well. But as I said, these were originally reserved for the much higher spec Luxmans, so a very nice inclusion and a very worthy inclusion too. So in terms of overall specification for an amplifier and the feature set, apart from a DAC, which personally I wouldn't really want in my amplifier, I can very easily give this a 9 out of 10 in terms of feature set, because without having the DAC, perhaps that would give it a 10 out of 10. I think this is where it comes very personal, because some would want an amp that does everything, so streamer, DAC, phono stage, amplification, headphone output, even it could have a tape out as well if you desire to use an external headphone amplifier. But generally speaking, this amplifier, for me personally and what I need it for, covers everything, and I think its features are outstanding, beautiful to look at and great to use. So a very easy 9 or potentially 10 out of 10. Okay, let us get on to the meat on the bones, and ultimately what we are interested in is how does it sound. The title says heaven or hell. I would easily categorise this as a heaven amplifier. It would be an amp that I could happily live with for the rest of my living days and never become tired of it. The fact that it has got so much flexibility in terms of how you can tune the tonal output is a great appeal for me personally. I use it as the main amplifier for even casual television watching, and it's fantastic. The audio is exceptionally clear, but ultimately most people are going to use this amplifier for very serious 2-channel listening. Now, it's not an inexpensive amplifier. It retails at £8,000, which is expensive, but I feel personally for that price point it's exceptional value for money. It's a Class AB, which again I like. I think it's pure Class A up to about 10 watts, and it goes Class AB after that. It never feels like it lacks headroom. I've played this exceptionally high volumes. It's driving a pair of the Revival Audio Atalante 5 loudspeakers, and it controls them beautifully. The sonic presentation is very detailed but never overly bright. But again, if you want it brighter, stick in some extra treble if that is your thing. And that's the beauty of this amplifier. It can be tuned to precisely what you want it to be. And very few amplifiers offer that level of flexibility. And this is where the Luxman amplifier range can become very appealing to people that want to exert that level of control. So in terms of that aspect, it is without peer, I feel, and at the price point, there's very few amplifiers that I have heard around that price that I would consider as being as good. And I think the fact that it's remained in my system for 6 months demonstrates that I personally really enjoyed listening to it. If it wasn't, I would have had it out before now, because the expression "not suffering fools gladly" applies to my impatience with audio components that don't meet the grade that I expect. That is very organic sounding, very natural sounding, nice bass extension. I do like a good bass extension in a presentation of sound, but I want it to be realistic, not overly bloated or too accentuated. If you've listened to live orchestras playing, there is huge dynamics, there are huge transients in the sound, which is what makes classical music for me personally very appealing. And where the Luxman really shines, there's a piece of music, it's Chanson Danse Macabre, and that starts very slowly and it builds and it builds and it builds, and then the transients are like bam, and they come, and it's, you know, it can really stress the system. I remember years ago when we worked with Lindemann, their music book and their amplifier, power amplifier, you could tie to the music books. It was part of the music book series, and playing the same piece of music and playing it, I would say, at moderately high volume level. And when it came to this big transient in the musical piece, suddenly the sound went off. It just went silent because the current demand was so high, the amplifier tripped into protection mode. And at first I thought there was a fault elsewhere in the system. Put another amp, absolutely fine. Put the Lindemann back in, definitely wasn't fine, and it was starting to cut out because of the transient. And this is quite an exceptionally demanding piece of music that I really like to test amplifiers with, because I know, and actually since that experience with the Lindemann, I kind of shut my eyes and I was like, when it gets to that point, frightened that it's going to cut out. I've only ever had that happen a few times with other amplifiers, but the Luxman, no. And I've even cranked the volume up to the point where it's so loud it's going to start, you know, it would frighten a policeman's horse at 200 meters. That's how loud it would be, and it just keeps on getting louder, distortion free, just a beautiful sound. In terms of the sound staging on this amplifier, it is beautifully layered and textured. The layering front to back is fantastic. It really just gives you a sense of the performance. You really feel that everything is natural, has its own air and space around instruments and vocals. It's just a lovely amplifier. I can't really pick anything that I would say, well, I'd improve this or this could have been done better. I think the whole application of the design thesis has been delivered exceptionally well, as is with all Luxman amplifiers. There isn't an amplifier in the Luxman range that disappoints. This really sits very nicely, sort of second to top of the integrated amplifiers. And as I said, £8,000 is an exceptionally, I would say, exceptionally high amount of money. And for most people, that's a very serious financial investment. But here's the thing, Luxman have got 100 years of heritage. There is no other company that I know of in the audio industry that has that same lineage or depth of experience. Luxman build their amplifiers and over-engineer their amplifiers. Again, arguably there are some that maybe don't. I think there's some fantastic amplifiers as an audiophile that are available to you today, and I would say even more levels of buyer confidence in audio components than there was, say, 20 odd years ago when I first started in this industry. But Luxman have been there year after year. Yes, they had a very ropey period in the 80s, and they were tied up with Alpine on the car audio side of things, and that was a kind of a messy period for Luxman. But now they've got fantastic financial investment that shows in all the products they build. You get a 5-year parts and labour warranty with Luxman. I rarely have come across a Luxman going faulty. I'm just sitting here thinking, trying to remember a Luxman that went faulty. I think we've had occasional issues with the valve-based phono stage, but generally it's to do with the valves and nothing to do with the amplifier itself, and that can happen to any valve device. So not anything going wrong with the amp, just sometimes valves don't travel that well. If a valve is going to go, it'll do so in the first 90 days. If it's working after that, then generally it'll work for years without issue. So they do over-engineer these amplifiers. I think this amplifier would suit any system. I can't think of a system where it wouldn't fit in, because it's very much a chameleon type amp that you can make it how you want it to be, and I like it. It's very easy to do. You're not having to delve into a menu to create the EQ that you want. It's all done manually and in an analog way, and I just love that. It's hugely musical, highly enjoying, and it's just one of these amplifiers that you sit down confidently to listen to your music and you just enjoy the music. You're not becoming analytical about that listening process. And that's often the risk in this industry, and I've experienced that myself. Sometimes we tend to be too analytical, so we're listening more to the device than the music piece itself. And I've never found myself doing that with the Luxman. It is musical, and musicality comes first, and that's where this emotional connection comes into play. You can play this at party levels. I mean, I kid you not, I've had this cranked up exceptionally loud, playing some really raucous rock music. I'm a big AC/DC fan, and I've played some of their tracks. There's the Jack Off the High Voltage album, which is a particularly well produced piece of rock music, and if you haven't heard it, I would recommend you put it on your playlist. It's quite demanding. It can sound a bit harsh in some systems, but on the Luxman, it didn't do anything other than impress. So overall, this amplifier gets an easy 9 out of 10 from me. I could live with this forever. I think it's a great piece of Luxman engineering. If you're in the market for an integrated amplifier and that one is on your shortlist, if it isn't, it definitely should be if that's your price range that you're looking at. And quite frankly, I doubt there's many amplifiers at that price point that would compete. But again, as I said, it's personal preference, personal taste. So ultimately, it's a huge recommendation. It's one that I have loved having at home for the last 6 months. I'll be sorry to see it go, because I've got other amps that I'm going to replace it with as I go through the testing process. The new 509Z I'm going to bring in and put in my system at home, which in theory should be better. There's a £3,000 price differential, so it'll be very interesting to see what you're gaining for that £3,000 additional cost. Okay, so there we go. 507, been in my system for 6 months, absolutely love it, great amplifier, definitely heaven, and definitely an overall 9 out of 10. Very easy to like, integrate, very flexible, it'll drive any loudspeaker that you have, and yeah, beautiful amp. So, as always in the video at this point, I have a huge favour to ask you. That is that if you're enjoying the video content that we're producing, we're putting a huge amount of effort in listening to what you've asked for. We have a video coming up around the Eversolo DMP A8 that will go through all the controls. They are complex and they're almost at pro level, so a lot of people will be frightened and shy away from them. What we want to do is to demystify that aspect of the Eversolo and make it a very easy process to figure out which of these settings is going to suit you best. So look out for that video. We have got the Bristol Hi-Fi show, which we are exhibiting at the end of February. I'll bring all the details up on screen. You can buy tickets now for this show. I'll also put in the description of the video how you can find us, where we are. We would love to see you at the Bristol show. Please come along. We've got a huge Electro Compagnie setup with the UK premiere of the AW300M monoblocks. We also will have, which I think I wasn't meant to mention last time, the Revival Audio Atalanti 4s, which haven't even been press released, but they are physically en route to us and they will be with us tomorrow, I believe. And when I'm allowed to, I will give you some pictures of that. And we will have personnel from both Electro Compagnie and Revival Audio, and of course the team from Elite Audio there at the Bristol show, and we would love to meet you. So please make a point, even just popping in to say hello to us, that would be really appreciated, and I'd be ever so grateful if you could do that for me. Finally, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. It means a great deal to us here at Elite Audio. We're a small team of dedicated professionals that genuinely care and put our heart and soul into what we do to provide you with not only great video content, but great advice, which is impartial. You can email me directly, which I've had emails from many from around the world, and thank you very much for taking the time to message me, and I hope the replies I've given have been useful in your quest to find the audio components that you're looking to upgrade your system with. So subscribe, it takes a few seconds and it does matter to us a great deal. If you haven't done so already, why not subscribe to our newsletter? It comes out every 2 weeks. Within there are very exclusive offers that are only in our newsletter, and early bird offers on part exchanges and pre-loved items that get shown on our newsletter first. So you get to see all of these before anybody else. Why not subscribe for one? If it's not for you, unsubscribe. It takes 2 seconds. It's very easy to do. Just click in the email. It's very clear where you can unsubscribe from. But why not try it? You may find it's got something in there that means the appeal is there, or even just getting these early bird offers, or offers that you can't get anywhere else because they're not publicised, they're only in our newsletter. It's maybe worth having a look for that alone. And again, I'll put that in the video description so you can click on that and subscribe to that as well. As ever, have a great week listening to music. It is one of the most amazing human experiences that we can have. It is a fantastic experience for all of our senses. And please take care till next week's video. Thank you so much for watching this today. From my heart and from the team at Elite Audio, we really appreciate you watching me talking along about things that we are exceptionally passionate about here. So until next week, take care, and I will look forward to seeing you then.